You don't apologize because you're polite. You apologize because somewhere back there, staying safe depended on it. Notice how fast the word slips out. Someone bumps into you on the street, and you're the one saying sorry. A waiter brings the wrong dish, and somehow you apologize for sending it back. A friend cancels on you last minute, and there you go again. No, it's totally fine. Don't worry about it. You apologize for crying, for asking a question, for taking up a little too much space in a room. And here's the strange part. You've done it so many times, the word stopped meaning anything. It's not politeness. It's a reflex you learned a long time ago. If even one of those felt a little too familiar, go ahead and follow along. What we're about to unpack is something most people carry for decades without ever once stopping to question. Because that reflexive apology isn't a personality quirk. It's a clue, and it leads straight back to a room you might have forgotten you ever stood in. The disturbing childhood reason you apologize for everything. Let's start with what actually happens in your body. Someone's tone shifts, just slightly, and before you've even processed why, the apology is already out of your mouth. Sorry, my bad. You didn't decide to say it. There was no thought, no pause, no little voice weighing the options. It just fired, the way your knee jerks when a doctor taps it. That's the first thing worth understanding about chronic apologizing. It isn't a choice you keep making badly. It's a reflex, and reflexes, by definition, happen before thinking. Now, most people will tell you to just stop saying sorry so much. Helpful, right? About as useful as telling someone to stop flinching. Because here's what they're missing. The over-apologizing isn't the problem. It's the smoke. Somewhere underneath, there's a fire that got lit years ago, and the reflexive apology is just the smoke still drifting up from it. You can wave the smoke away all day long, but until you find the room where the fire started, your mouth will keep saying that word, on its own, without asking you first. So let's actually look at what that word is doing. When you apologize for something that isn't your fault, you're not really expressing regret. You're managing a threat. You're saying, in code, please don't be upset with me. Please stay. I'll make myself smaller so this doesn't turn into something bad. That's the hidden message tucked inside your reflexive sorry. It's not about the spilled coffee or the cancelled plan. It's a tiny act of self-protection dressed up as politeness. And nobody's born knowing how to do that. To understand it, we have to go back. Picture a kid, maybe 4, maybe 6, in a house where the emotional weather changed without warning. 1 minute, things were calm. The next, a door slammed, a voice rose, and the whole room went cold. That child couldn't control when the storm came. But they were paying attention. They were always paying attention. And somewhere in there, a small, brilliant brain started running an experiment. What makes the storm smaller? What makes it pass faster? That question would quietly shape the next 30 years. Here's what that child figured out, probably without words. When things got tense, taking the blame worked. Saying sorry, it was me, I'll fix it, sometimes calmed the bigger person down. Apologizing, even for things that weren't theirs to own, brought a little safety, a little peace. This is what psychologists call the Fawn response. When fight isn't safe and running isn't possible, a child learns to appease, to soothe the threat by surrendering to it. Therapist Pete Walker named this pattern, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I want to be really clear about something here, because it matters. That child was not weak. That child was not broken. That child was smart. In an environment where their safety depended on someone else's mood, they found a strategy that actually worked. They learned to read the room, lower the temperature, and keep the peace. The reflexive apology kept them safe when they had no other power. It was, in the truest sense, a survival adaptation. The tragedy isn't that they learned it. It's that nobody ever told them they could stop. Because the body doesn't get the memo that the storm is over. The 4-year-old who learned to apologize is now 35, sitting in a meeting, saying sorry before offering an idea. The nervous system that once scanned a parent's face for danger now scans a partner's text for hidden anger. Same software, new hardware. This is the thing about a survival adaptation. It doesn't expire when you grow up. It keeps running quietly in the background, still trying to protect a child who, somewhere inside you, isn't quite sure the danger has passed. There's a word for that background scanning, and it's worth knowing: hypervigilance. It's the state of a nervous system that never fully stood down. You walk into a gathering, and within seconds, you've read every face, clocked every shift in tone, mapped where the tension might be. People call you perceptive, sensitive, so good at reading people. And you are. But that gift came at a price. You became an expert at other people's emotions because once upon a time, missing the signs wasn't an option. Your safety depended on catching them first. And so the apology became your tool for managing all of it. Notice how often you say sorry not because you did something wrong, but because someone else seems upset. Their bad mood walks into the room, and you instinctively reach for the blame, as if absorbing it might dissolve the tension. Did I do something? Are we okay? You take ownership of feelings that were never yours to carry. It's a strange kind of generosity, handing people your innocence so they don't have to feel uncomfortable for even a moment. Let me tell you about a person who lived this without knowing it. A man in his 40s, successful by every outward measure, came to realize he apologized roughly 40 times a day. He counted once on a dare from a friend. Sorry for being early. Sorry for the question. Sorry for the weather, somehow. What unsettled him wasn't the number. It was that he couldn't feel the apologies anymore. They'd become punctuation. Just the sound his mouth made between sentences, smoothing the air around him so nobody would ever have a reason to turn on him. When he finally traced it back, the memory wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no broken dishes. Just a kitchen and a parent who went silent, cold, withdrawn, for days at a time whenever something displeased them. No explanation. No timeline for when the warmth would return. For a small child, that silence was terrifying, because it felt endless, and it felt like it was somehow his fault. So he learned to apologize fast, apologize first, apologize for anything, just to coax the warmth back. The Fawn response, wearing the mask of a polite little boy. Here's the part that tends to land hard, so sit with it. That silence taught him something deeper than say sorry. It taught him that his needs were dangerous, that wanting something, asking for something, simply being a bit too much, that's what made the warmth disappear. So he didn't just apologize for mistakes. He started apologizing for existing, for having preferences, for taking up space at the table he was supposed to belong to. And maybe reading this, you recognize that flavor of guilt, the one that shows up even when you've done absolutely nothing wrong. This is where conflict avoidance gets wired in too. If keeping the peace once kept you safe, then any disagreement starts to feel like genuine danger, not just discomfort. So you go along with things. You swallow the opinion. You say it's fine, through a clenched jaw, then lie awake replaying the conversation, furious at yourself for not speaking up. It's not that you don't have a voice. It's that, very early, you learned your voice could cost you the connection you couldn't afford to lose. Silence felt safer than risking the storm. And the cost compounds quietly over the years. Every reflexive apology is a tiny withdrawal from your own sense of self. Drop by drop, you teach the people around you that your needs are negotiable, your boundaries are soft, your no is always up for discussion. Worse, you start to believe it yourself. You lose track of what you actually want, because you've spent so long tracking what everyone else wants. This is the slow erosion of self-abandonment, not a dramatic collapse, but 1,000 small surrenders, each one disguised as being easy to get along with. You might notice it in the strangest little moments, ordering food and saying whatever's easiest because choosing feels like an imposition, feeling your chest tighten when someone's quiet, immediately assuming you caused it, over-explaining a simple request until it sounds like a plea for forgiveness, thanking people excessively for basic kindness, as if their decency were a favor you hadn't earned. These aren't random tics. They're all the same root system, breaking the surface in different spots, a nervous system still convinced it has to earn its place in the room. There's research that makes this painfully concrete. The landmark ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experiences, run by Dr. Vincent Felitti and Dr. Robert Ander through Kaiser Permanente and the CDC back in 1998, found that emotional environments in childhood don't just bruise feelings, they shape the developing brain and body for life. Chronic stress, even the quiet kind, even without a single raised hand, rewires how a child's nervous system handles threat. The unpredictability you grew up in wasn't nothing. Your body kept the score long before you had language for what was happening. So if you've spent years wondering why you can't just be more confident or stop being so apologetic, here's your answer. You're not fighting a bad habit. You're fighting a survival adaptation that's older than your conscious memory, one that got installed when the stakes felt like life or death. Because to a small, dependent child, losing a caregiver's love genuinely does feel like death. Willpower was never going to be enough against something that runs that deep. You can't out-discipline a reflex built to keep you alive. And this is where it turns. A reflex can be retrained. Slowly. Not by force, not by shaming yourself every time the word slips out, which only adds another layer of guilt to the pile. The work is gentler and stranger than that. It starts with catching the apology after it happens, with curiosity instead of criticism. Just noticing. There it went again. I wonder what made me feel unsafe right then. No fixing yet. Just watching. You're beginning to separate the present moment from the old one it keeps getting confused with. Here's a concrete place to start, something you can do this week. Keep a small tally on your phone. Every time you apologize, a quick note of what triggered it. Don't judge the count. Just gather data. After a few days, patterns will surface. Certain people, certain situations, certain tones that send you reaching for sorry. That map is gold, because once you can see when the reflex fires, you can start asking the question underneath it. Am I actually responsible here, or am I just trying to make myself safe? Then comes the swap, and it's smaller than you'd think. Instead of sorry I'm late, try thank you for waiting. Instead of sorry to bother you, try do you have a moment. Watch what happens. The apology hands your power away. Gratitude or a simple request keeps it. You're not being rude. That fear of rudeness is the old wiring talking. You're just refusing to treat your own existence as an offense that needs constant pardon. It feels deeply unnatural at first. That discomfort is the sign you're doing it right. And there's a deeper layer, the one that does the real healing. Somewhere inside you, that scanning, apologizing child is still there. Still bracing, still trying to keep the peace. Reparenting yourself means becoming the calm adult that child never had. When you catch the reflex, you can quietly tell that younger part, we're safe now. You don't have to manage everyone's feelings anymore. That was never your job. I've got it from here. It sounds strange, maybe even a little silly, but that inner child healing is precisely how the nervous system finally learns the storm has passed. You can make this tangible if you want to go there. Try writing a short letter to the child you were, the one who learned to say sorry before they learned to feel safe. Tell them what no adult told them back then, that the silence wasn't their fault, that the cold moods weren't theirs to fix, that they were never too much. It might bring up more than you expect, and that's okay. Grief that's been waiting 20, 30 years tends to arrive all at once when you finally open the door. Let it come. It's been waiting to be witnessed. Because underneath the over-apologizing, that's what was really happening. A grief no one ever acknowledged. You weren't just managing a difficult environment. You were quietly mourning the safety you should have been able to take for granted. The unconditional warmth that shouldn't have come with conditions. And you carried that mourning so silently that even you forgot it was there, mistaking it for a personality, a flaw, a thing about yourself to fix. It was never a flaw. It was a wound that learned to apologize for bleeding. So let's name what this really is clearly once. Emotional safety. The simple, fundamental sense that you can exist, take up space, and have needs without losing connection. That's what was missing. And a child who grows up without it doesn't become bad or broken. They become adaptive. Endlessly, exhaustingly adaptive. They become the person who reads every room, smooths every tension, and apologizes for the rain. You learn to earn your place because somewhere back there, you were made to feel your place wasn't guaranteed. Now here's a question worth holding gently. What would it mean to stop auditioning for a spot you already have, to walk into a room and not immediately calculate how to make yourself agreeable enough to stay, It's hard to even imagine, isn't it? Because the scanning has been running so long it feels like you. But it isn't you. It's a strategy, a very old, very loyal strategy that protected a child who needed protecting. And strategies, unlike personalities, can be set down once they've done their job. The reflex won't vanish overnight, and that's fine. You'll still catch yourself apologizing to a doorframe you bumped into. But something shifts when you understand where it came from. The word stops being a verdict on your worth and starts being a little messenger, a tap on the shoulder from a younger you, saying, "I got scared just now." And instead of scolding that part, you can answer it with the kindness it never got. That's the whole turn. Not silencing the sorry, but finally hearing what it was always trying to say. Self-compassion, then, isn't some soft, abstract idea. It's the practical, daily act of treating that frightened inner child the way a good parent would, with patience, with warmth, with a steady "you're okay, I'm here." Every time you catch the reflex and respond with understanding instead of frustration, you lay down one new track in a nervous system that only ever knew the old one. It's slow. It's repetitive. It's not glamorous. But this is how someone who learned to keep the peace finally learns to keep themselves, by choosing over and over to stay on their own side. And maybe that's the quiet revolution hiding inside something as small as the word sorry. You spent so many years apologizing to keep everyone else comfortable. What if the bravest thing you could do now is stop apologizing for the parts of you that were only ever trying to survive? The flinch, the scanning, the reflexive blame, none of it was failure. It was a child doing the best they could with what they were given. And that child deserves, at long last, to hear that they did nothing wrong by simply needing to feel safe. So before we go any further, take a breath and notice, really notice, how often that word has been carrying weight it was never meant to carry. You don't have to fix it today. You just have to see it for what it is, a reflex, a message, a small, faithful echo of a room you survived. And once you can see it that clearly, you can start to wonder about all the other quiet things you learned to say back then, the phrases that became armor, the words that stopped meaning what they say. So here's where I'll leave you, not with a fix, but with a question you can actually sit with. The next time that word slips out, can you pause, just for a breath, and ask yourself, am I truly responsible right now, or is a frightened kid inside me just trying to stay safe? That single question, asked with kindness instead of judgment, is where everything begins to change. You don't have to win the battle today. You just have to notice the war was never yours to fight in the first place. And I'm curious about you, the real you, not the one who keeps the peace. Think back to that child who learned to apologize before they understood why. What's one word that describes them? Scared? Watchful? Tired? Too grown too soon? Drop that single word in the comments. Not for me, for them. Sometimes naming that child out loud, where others can see it, is the first time they've ever been acknowledged at all. And you might be surprised how many people are about to write the very same word as you. If this gave language to something you've carried quietly, you already know where to find the rest of what we explore here. Thank you, truly, for staying to the end. For giving this the time, when staying with hard things probably isn't what you were taught felt safe. Because here's what I most want you to walk away with. That reflexive sorry was never weakness, and it was never you being too much. It was a small, clever child who found the one tool that kept them safe in a room they couldn't control, and then never got told they could set it down. You weren't broken. You were protected by the very thing you've been ashamed of. You don't owe the world an apology for surviving. There's one phrase, though, that runs even deeper than sorry. You say it constantly, to your friends, your family, the person who asks how you're holding up. 2 small words you've turned into a wall. You say them when you're exhausted, when you're falling apart inside, when the last thing on earth that's true is those 2 words. And the strangest part? You've said it so often, you've half convinced yourself. But that phrase was never about them. It was about a child who learned that the truth was too dangerous to say out loud.